Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the program today, a driving force and the First Amendment. Ray Hager has the rundown.
Thanks, Sam. Our first guest is Jeff Fontaine. He's the director of Nevada Department of Transportation. He'll talk about the gridlock we all face on our way to work. Our second guest is presidential historian Clay Jenkinson. Fresh from his Chautauqua performance of Teddy Roosevelt, he's going to talk about the First Amendment.
And coming up on the Power Pundit panel today, Martha Gould, John Mason, and Anjeanette Damon. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communications, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
Nevada Newsmakers is sponsored in part by the Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? Yeah, they do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And we welcome to the program the head of NDOT for the state, Jeff Fontaine. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
There is a certain irony to the fact that we've just given back $300 million. We're in the process of doing so in surplus funds back to the taxpayers. And at the same time, in the out years, 2008 2014, we're going to need an additional $2.4 billion in revenue to keep up with roads. I personally have no problem with growth as long as we keep up with infrastructure. How are we going to do this?
Well, Sam, first of all, what we're looking at is an analysis of the needs based on initial projections as well as our projections for revenues in the out years, 2008 through 2014. Right now, NDOT is underway with its largest construction program ever. We have about $685 million worth of construction out there, and we plan to put out to bid in the next 6 months another $735 million in projects. Those projects are funded through 2008 and as long as it takes to complete those projects. What we're talking about is the needs for the future of this state. We project, continued growth, and by 2010 there's projected to be 2.8 million people in this state, 415,000 living here in Washoe County. In addition to the growth, more people are driving even more miles because the growth in travel is greater than the growth in population. That's a trend across the country and certainly a trend here in the state of Nevada. We also project a significant increase in freight truck traffic coming through the state with the ports in Oakland and Southern California, the expansion in their capacity there. That freight is moving inland. It's moving across the interstate highways in Nevada. So we want to look out in the future. We want to make sure that the projects that NDOT is working on now, that we're starting the environmental assessments we're actually in the planning stages and in some cases design. We want to make sure that we've lined those projects up and that we present those projects to the public and say, hey, they're ready to go. How are we going to fund these? We know that we're going to have a shortfall.
Because we're going to have a shortfall, do you favor an increase in the gas tax to help cover some of these expenses?
Well, we're not favoring anything at this point, and in fact, what the governor and the State Transportation Board did was establish a task force to look at these issues, and the first thing that this task force will look at is, number one, the needs, number two, our analysis in terms of the revenues, and the costs and the projections, and then three, start looking at various alternatives. Now, we're not proposing any types of increases in taxes or anything else at this point, but you look across the country and every state is facing this situation. Nevada, of course, more so because of our growth, but states are looking at tolling, public-private partnerships, a variety of different mechanisms. So the gas tax in and of itself isn't necessarily the only way to go. And in fact, when you look at the national level, because of the increased mileage that vehicles are getting, hybrids and things of that nature, the gas tax may not be the best mechanism for funding roads in the future.
There's an interesting article in yesterday's New York Times that talked about some of the newer hybrids that are actually no more gas efficient than current cars. They're using the efficiencies of the hybrid to increase the power of the cars rather than to save gas. So it's kind of ironic there. What do you think? And I'm not sure if you want to step into this mess. We've got a situation here in northern Nevada where the Washoe County Commission is pretty much hands-off on this Tahoe Pyramid Link. This is a road that is desperately needed, and yet it seems to me that several members of the county commission have got blinders on, saying, well, we can probably widen a few roads, we won't have to worry about this. Don't they have a responsibility to build the roads that we need so that we don't end up with utter gridlock?
Well, locally, of course, the Regional Transportation Commission is the planning agency for those types of issues here in Washoe County, and it's a very tough issue. We face that all the time when we're looking at constructing a new freeway and the alignment, and nobody wants a new freeway through their front yard or backyard. It's a very difficult situation, but I believe that Washoe County and the RTC and the local entities here will come to a decision that's going to benefit everybody, because again, as you can see, with the increase in growth and the traffic, and the community is spreading out, and we can't just afford to put everybody on Interstate 80 and US 395 and send them through the spaghetti bowl. We have to have alternate routes.
Now, one of the projects that's currently underway is the I-580 project, which would link Reno and Carson with the new freeway system. Now, in this project, there are 9 bridges, and one of them cost $40 million, is over 6 football fields long. Do you think, very expensive, do you think a better route could have been planned to make this construction less expensive for the taxpayer?
Well, this relates back to the earlier question. Over 20 years ago, the planning for that freeway was initiated, and of course the people in Pleasant Valley and those along the existing 395 didn't want the freeway widened through their community. The Department of Transportation looked at the other side of the hill, and the people over there didn't want it, so a compromise was drawn, not so much by the engineers, but I think by elected officials, that let's put it in a location where people will not oppose it. And the alignment we have is the alignment we have. As engineers, we certainly have a challenge. And that bridge you're talking about is necessary to span Galena Creek. It'll be a 1,700-foot long bridge, 300 feet above the creek. It'll be a magnificent structure. Of course, it's probably not the most or the cheapest way that we could have built the freeway had we different alignment, but sometimes in order to mitigate those concerns that the community has, we have to spend money to avoid those.
One last quick question. We're running out of time rapidly here. Down in southern Nevada, you've got Coyote Springs going in, which is going to be a city of about 200,000 people, about an hour's drive from Las Vegas. You've got Pahrump exploding in growth, which is about an hour's drive. You've also got Jim Rhodes building homes on the Arizona side of the border. Are you planning for the kind of, are those going to be essentially bedroom communities for Las Vegas?
Well, we certainly recognize the growth that is occurring, particularly outside the community, and a number of projects that we're doing, I think, will accommodate some of those communities. For example, In southern Nevada, we're underway with building a new bridge across the Colorado River, magnificent project.
And that's going to open up that Arizona line?
That will open up the Arizona side. Of course, a part of that project, or the extension of that project, will be a Boulder City bypass, a bypass around Boulder City. Looking out to the north, Interstate 15, we've got some plans to widen Interstate 15 as far north as Apex. So we've got a lot of plans underway for road projects in southern Nevada. Again, the growth is not going to stop down there.
Jeff Fontaine, always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being here. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communications, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
Nevada Newsmakers is sponsored in part by the Nevada Beer Wholesalers Association.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and social security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? Yeah, they do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And we are joined by Clay Jenkinson. He's the author of Becoming Jefferson's People, Reinventing the American Republic in the 21st Century. Welcome, as always.
Always great to be here.
Okay, let's start out with talking about the First Amendment, because I've been going on now for several weeks about this issue of the reporter for the New York Times being in jail for a story that she didn't write. That, to me, is just unbelievable. And by the way, today is the 2-week anniversary of that jailing. Talk to me about the First Amendment.
Well, the First Amendment was passed without a lot of congressional discussion. That's one of the interesting facts about the Bill of Rights, that they really were adopted without significant national discussion. If they'd known how important the first 10 amendments would become, the debate would have been protracted. But the First Amendment has been seen by the courts as a practical absolute. We can all think of some instance where free speech has to be curtailed, but I don't think this is one of them. There is a very long-standing tradition in this country of journalists being able to protect their sources, and without it we wouldn't have had Watergate, we wouldn't have had the New York Times leaking the Pentagon Papers. Some of the most important steps forward in the progressive movement in the history of this country and accountability in government have been made possible by leaks, by secret sources, and by the sanctity of the First Amendment. So we can't blanch now over something as tiny as this.
What do you think about Time Magazine giving up their sources over the Reporters Protest? I mean, I watched the Meet the Press, and Matt Cooper from Time Magazine was on there, and he just looked so embarrassed by the fact that Time Magazine gave up his emails, his confidential sources, and even though he was let off the hook by his sources to be able to go testify, What do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't have done it that way, but Time Magazine is a corporation, and they can respond to these things as they see fit. Now, he might choose not to stay at that organization after a humiliation of this sort. I don't think they've set back the cause of freedom of the press in doing so. We're living in one of the most dangerous times in human history. We don't know what the future is. The London bombings, 9/11, bin Laden is still out there. This is not routine time in American life, and so everyone, I think, is trying to figure out what the right path is, and I think there are many legitimate right paths, but I think we should try to hold out for the First Amendment because it is such a critical tool for democracy.
Clay, you mentioned that Time Magazine was owned by a corporation. Many newspapers and magazines and television stations are also owned by corporations, even including the Reno Gazette-Journal. Do you think this is a bad road to go down for journalism?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. First of all, too few voices. The diversity has narrowed. There's been a funneling of voices. And secondly, the sort of independence, the muckraker spirit, I think is harder to keep alive in a time like this. And I think it also creates a perception problem. Even if these journals are telling the truth, the public sees them as heavily colluded with the entertainment industry and with values that are not, strictly speaking, the search for truth. So I think it's a dangerous trend. But it's the same thing in hardware at Home Depot, and it's the same thing in books at Barnes & Noble. This is a kind of a new era of trust building, of monopolies, and at some point it's going to unravel, but it certainly shows no signs of it.
Okay.
Mark Felt revealed his deep throat. Was that something that was on your radar?
It was. My father, who's been dead for now 11 years, was a Nixon hater before it was cool. Back in the 50s and early 60s. And when Watergate happened, I remember this, I was in high school, he took a leave of absence from his job as a banker in Jenkinson, North Dakota, and we spent the summer watching the Watergate hearings. And he cross-referenced them. And he had theories of deep throat. And when Mark Felt came out a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago now, I just wished my father were still alive, because it would have been one of the great days of his life, and he would have gone back and read all of the books to try to figure out what he had missed. I just reread All the President's Men the other day on an airline, and it's clear that it's Mark Felt. Once you know it's Mark Felt, the book gives clues all over the place. When you read the book now, you know it had to be an FBI person.
Well, Bernstein and Woodward, when that book was published, they called Mark Felt on the telephone to talk to him, said, hey, we talk about you, we don't give you your name, and he was so angry that he hung up on him.
Yeah, well, there was an agreement that they would never divulge his name.
And they never did.
They never did, but then finally, of course, he's elderly. Apparently he has some significant mental health issues. His family is somewhat indigent, and he allowed himself to be outed very late in the game. There's a question about whether he actually was able to give rational consent to this, but it's been so long ago now that it doesn't really matter, although it was interesting to see Pat Buchanan and others still from that era, still angry and saying that he had committed treason. I don't regard Mark Felt as having committed treason. There was an FBI compromise of integrity to serve Nixon's crookedness. When the FBI serves the crookedness of a president of the United States, that's a bigger treason than a gutsy second man in the office.
He's almost a whistleblower, in a way.
A quiet one. Meeting late at night in those parking garages. It's one of the great stories in American life, and it fueled, as you know, a whole generation of journalists, including probably Judith Miller.
Indeed. We're out of time, but as always, a pleasure to have you here. Come back soon.
Whenever you ask.
You could be here every day. Becoming Jefferson's People, Reinventing the American Republic in the 21st Century. Available everywhere?
Everywhere.
All righty. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Since its creation more than a decade ago, the Southern Nevada Water Authority has focused on 3 goals: preserving water quality, improving water conservation in Southern Nevada, and meeting the community's current and future water needs. Through thoughtful planning, responsible management, and collaboration, it's succeeding. As we move into the 21st century, the authority continues to embrace sustainable water development and efficient water use. That's our promise to Nevada.
When making your decision as where to play golf, consider the resort at Red Hawk. You know you have made the right choice the moment you arrive. The friendly staff welcomes you to our award-winning pro shop. You know you've made the right decision on the first tee. The Lakes course is in the best condition in years. You know you've made the right choice after you've played 18 holes. The Resort at Red Hawk, the right choice.
I tell you, John, this industry has really changed.
Tell me about it.
You seem to do pretty well last year. What's your secret?
No secrets. Although I'll tell you something. The smartest thing I did was sign up with Pro Group Management.
Really? They do workers' comp, right?
Yeah, their services are great. And get this, they saved me 30%. I've heard they saved others 50%.
That works for me.
Pro Group Management. Finally, workers' comp that works for you.
As an employer, did you know you can be held liable for negligent hiring? A background screening by Employer Links can uncover criminal records, like alcohol and drug convictions. It can verify the applicant's education, driving records, and professional licenses. Employer Links can check civil records, registered sex offender records, and Social Security fraud. Hiring the right person shouldn't be a gamble. Call Employer Links. Employer Links, protecting your investment.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And we're joined on our Power Pundit panel today by Martha Gould. We have Anjeanette Damon here from the Reno Gazette-Journal and attorney John Mason. Welcome to all of you. Okay, let's start out with you, Anjeanette. Dina Titus declaring all over the place over the last 48 hours. When we interviewed her on the program yesterday, I just kind of sensed that she had gone from just plain talking Dina to candidate Dina. There just seemed to be a difference in the way that she was projecting herself. A lot more platitudes.
Yeah, I think a lot of what she says seems like rhetoric that has been helped along by some of her consultants, but she's still Dina Titus. I mean, you can still, when you ask her questions, she believes in what she's saying. I get that sense. It's just maybe a different packaging of how it comes out of her mouth. She's going to be a very interesting candidate to watch. She is outside of that kind of political establishment, so it's going to be a really fun race to cover for a newspaper reporter, I can tell you that
John,
much.
what's your take on the governor's race at this point?
Well, it's been really interesting to see the jockeying around, and I'm seeing that bugaboo again of the powers that be trying to manipulate candidates, either isolate them or bring them into the race. And
may I ask, for example?
For example, Chancellor Rogers speaking up in the Gibbons campaign when Chancellor Rogers isn't even a candidate. I don't know what motivation he had other than people that he's been talking to.
Like the
governor. It was noted in the Reno Gazette-Journal that he'd met with the governor. Well, why would Jim Rogers come out and make comments about Jim Gibbons when Rogers isn't even a candidate, let alone an opponent of Jim Gibbons? So that's been interesting. I thought it was a terrific idea for Dina Titus to come up here and announce here, and interesting to start in Douglas County where 40 people showed up, and Reno a handful. It's a long road when you start down the gubernatorial race, and I think she's making a good effort at it.
Do you think that she's going to be able to raise the money, Martha?
I think probably she will be able to raise a fairly decent amount of money. I think she's a formidable candidate. One of her biggest problems is going to be, I think, making people in the North believe that she really thinks in terms of statewide issues, because in the legislature she's always been very much Clark County, Las Vegas. And there are a lot of us around who still remember that wonderful comment she made back during Fair Share when she talked about Washoe County sucking the blood life of Clark County and Las Vegas. But a lot of people aren't going to forget that.
Well, Martha,
she's going to have to overcome that.
That was quite a long time ago.
Makes no difference. Elephants have long memories, and unfortunately they're Republican elephants.
The thing about her, not fighting statewide before, she was elected by her constituents.
That is correct.
Fight for things in her district. And now I think she can pull out and fight for everybody in Nevada. I don't think that will be an issue.
I read her press release on the internet. I listened to her when she was interviewed. She comes across very well. She will be a formidable candidate. And frankly, Speaker Perkins is not I don't think he runs well. I don't think he projects well. And, you know, you're not hearing anything from him.
Well, we got 18, 19 months to go.
Yeah, they plan to announce. You know, Anjeanette, one of our jobs is always to look for clues. And I thought it was an interesting clue about Mayor Goodman and the possibility of him entering the... Would you stop laughing? Entering the governor's race. There was an article in the New York Times over the weekend about Oscar Goodman trying to get Major League Baseball into Las Vegas. And in the article, it says Goodman has 2 years left on his second term and said that he hopes in that time a decision to bring a team to the city will have been made. Assuming a third four-year term, he insisted that a team will move here by 2011.
So you see that maybe he's invested in that mayoral position down there?
It seems to sound like that from the tone of that article.
It could be, yeah. You know, and I think the same could be said for Mayor Bob Cashel. They've both got good things going in the cities that they're running. They're both well-liked in the cities that they run. And, you know, why kind of give up that position to go in a pretty what is looking like it's going to be a cutthroat governor's race. And we put in a position that's kind of removed, and how much power, you know, do you have over the state in that position compared to when you're mayor, you know, Mayor Bob Cashel, what he can get done in the city of Reno.
It seems like a mayor can get more done in a city than the governor can in a state, because the governor has to play this balancing act with the legislature and in some cases the Supreme Court.
That is correct.
To move anything, it's like pushing a giant water balloon up a hill.
Also, I want to point out, you said that Dina was elected to represent her constituency, and that is true. But nevertheless, the obligation and responsibility of the state legislature is the state of Nevada.
Well, that's in theory, but everybody in there is just cutting up the meats to give each
and she's going to have to overcome that.
It will be interesting.
Jim Gibbons overcame it, too, to become a congressman.
I think it'll be really interesting at this stage of the game to watch how the money plays out. I think whether or not you see the powers that be in Las Vegas that hold the campaign purse strings, if they're hedging their bets and are giving to both candidates, I think the session changed things for a lot of people. When you look at Richard Perkins' positions in the neighborhood gaming thing and how that might have affected his candidacy and ability to raise money.
Well, it's certainly taking away the anointment process here. I mean, I think for the first time in many, many years in the Silver State in the governor's race, we're actually looking at a race.
Well, I think there is an anointment process here, but they anointed Richard Perkins, and that anointment oil does not have the same mojo that it used to.
And on that note, we'll run a spot for our mojo, and we'll be right back after this.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the world's largest industrial park, the resort at Red Hawk, and the Peppermill family of casinos.
High-tech companies demand perfect world amenities. They require clean, reliable power, state-of-the-art fiber optic communications, and clean water sources. In a perfect world, companies would have immediate access to rail and interstate freeways. There would be 4-lane expressways that shorten shipping times and provide convenient commute routes for valued employees. Well, the future is now, and it's here. Welcome to the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, the largest industrial park in the world, building economic prosperity for Nevadans.
South Reno's hotspot for food, fun, and friends is the Tamarack Junction. Play over 480 of the hottest slots and video poker games. Enjoy hot times and sizzling food specials at Sully's Sports Bar, Grill, and Nightclub. Watch your favorite game on one of our jumbo high-definition plasma TVs. Enjoy great food 24 hours a day in the Dining Car Restaurant. Or sample the best hot and cold sandwiches in the Whistle Stop Deli. The Tamarack Junction is your junction for fun. South Virginia and Abadi Ranch Parkway. Yeah.
Don't forget, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers online now at NevadaNewsmakers.com. All the new shows are up by about 4 o'clock every afternoon.
Well, Sam, tomorrow we have former Governor Robert List.
We'll see you then.